Oh, hey guys. We are diving right in to animating in Animate, which is the most confusing sentence I might say all day. I don't know why they named it Animate and changed it from Flash. I think probably it was a PR move because the word Flash has a bad rap on the interweb. But oh well, here we are working in Animate. We're animating in Animate, whatever. All right, so in the last video, I had been messing around on another layer, and you can just hide that layer if you were following along, or you can delete it. I don't know. I'm not really too attached to my work, so I'm just going to remove that. I've realized that in the course of all of these videos, I have not saved. So save your work. I'm amazed that it hasn't crashed on me. It must be getting more stable, which is awesome. Go Adobe, way to be. Hit Control S, and I'm going to save over blip04 because I want to. So save it whatever you want to. You'll notice after you've saved it, when you hit Control Enter, the .swf that is generated here will be in the same folder as the .fla, which the FLA is this file. This is like the Flash file. They still left that, but they changed the other name. So the FLA and the SWF, which is Shockwave Flash, for those who are curious why it's called a SWF, will be in the same folder. And SWFs are actually really, really handy. A SWF works with Adobe After Effects quite well. You can import it into After Effects. It's lossless in its resolution. So you know how with vector, it like maintains that same crisp shape. It doesn't get pixelated. Well, you can like scale those things way up. And then in After Effects, you have a very high resolution edge and stuff to work with. It comes in handy. So yeah, SWFs and Flash files. All right, so how are we doing this here? We're scrubbing here. I'm clicking and dragging on this blue marker. You can click down here on the numbers or up above the numbers. Either one works just fine. How do we create animation in Animate? This is a very important thing to learn. I'm going to get out of the way because I'm right where we need to be looking here. I'm just going to go by. Okay, there I'm gone. All right, so we've got layer one, and we can just rename that over here by double clicking, and we can call that, rough animation, right? So special characters are not permitted. Oh, because I had a space, so it wants an underscore. No, that's fine. So if I add a new layer here, I can create more animation on a different layer. And remember, this is just like drawing, but now we can do it over time. So I can come in and I can say, oh gosh, I don't know, what do I want? It's like yellow, so maybe I'll add some yellow here, right? Something like that. And I can fill that in. I can convert this to just be an outline, which makes it a lot easier to draw on top of it, like so. And then remember I had you hit an F7 constantly. F7 is really nice. What it does is it creates a blank keyframe and it leaves the one that you already had done intact behind it. So if I come back here, it's F7. Now something, before I go any further, that I want to distinguish is you want to come over here, and I think by default you're going to have this auto keyframe feature turned on. And that might have been sort of throwing you for a loop if you were trying to, freestyle while we were animating before and not hitting F7, but trying to do some other stuff instead. I'll explain that really briefly, and you can decide for yourself if you like it or not. Basically, with auto keyframe, let's say that I'm drawing here. Maybe I want some of that yellow down on here or something, right? And then I move to the next frame. You can actually use the period key or the comma key to go back and forth. They have the little greater than or less than signs above them on the keyboard. Remember that document I had right here. Next frame, previous frame, have the little arrows. If you hold Alt and do it, it'll actually leap. And it's funny because this was a plugin that I had to build previously, but now it's actually built in. So there it is. Step forward to next frame, step backward to previous keyframe. I don't know if they saw my videos and built that into Flash, but you don't have to download the plugin anymore. It's kind of handy. The keyframe jumper that I made back in the day is now just a normal part of it. Adobe, you are welcome for the idea. I will expect payment when you want to admit that I gave you the idea. Okay, anyway. So coming on in here, if I just move over and if I have auto, what is that called? Auto insert keyframe activated, and I start painting, you'll see what happened down in my timeline. And it's kind of weird. This is why I turn it off, because it actually leaves this previous piece in place, but it adds the new one and it creates a new frame. So like on this frame, I had one of them, and on this frame, I have both of them, but I don't want both of them. I just want the one. And so I have to end up deleting it, which is why for me, auto keyframe, not the most useful when you're doing it by hand and so forth. So just click on that so the A goes away and it'll behave like expected. So now when I go to this next frame here and I'm like, you know, adding something on or whatever, it's keeping it the way that it was back here. Like it's just the same on both frames. Does that make sense? Because it's not creating a new black dot here that's holding for the rest. So I actually have to come and manually say, I want a blank keyframe with F7, and then I can like, I don't know. I don't even know if this is going to look good, guys. I'm just putting in shapes here. Shimmery, shiny shapes, because I like them. And then, you can just keep hitting F7, etc. Now, let's say for whatever reason, on this frame, I was like, yeah, and then I want it to kind of do this, and like I want it to spike out a little bit over here to have a little glint and glimmer, right? And I'm like, that's super cool. But then I was like, wait, no, it's not happening at the right time. I want that to happen like way sooner, right? Well, there's a couple ways that I can do that. I can come over here and notice that it's selected. And this is a really weird thing in Flash that I'm just going to call it Flash. I don't know. I'll call it Animate or Flash. You know what I'm talking about when I say either one, where it's selected. So if I click and drag it, it just moves the whole thing. If I want to deselect it, I just click off of it, and then I can like, do all the edits that I want. But if I select it here, hit Control X, and come over here, and they actually added this feature to Photoshop where you have to do Control Shift V to paste it in the same place. Because if you do Control V, it puts it in the middle of the camera, like wherever the center of your view is, that's where it puts it. So you want to do Control and Shift and V at the same time to get it there. So I can do that. Now, if I wanted to, say, move this whole frame somewhere, so now we're talking about, let me turn on the onion skinning here. So now we're talking about maybe there was like a frame where, it was like all popped out like this or something. Maybe that one comes back in and this one's like popped out. And it's like starting to get really thin, almost ready to dissolve. And I'm looking at my animation now and I'm like, oh, that's happening too soon. I want it to happen later. You can come in here, click on the frame itself, make sure you're clicking on the right layer too, because remember, this layer down here is the white shapes behind, and this is the yellow shapes on top, right? And I can click it and hold it, and I can drag this little thing around, and I can put it anywhere. I can put it on a different layer. I can put it on the same layer. Notice what starts happening though. It starts doing some wonky stuff because, and this, again, it just takes some getting used to. Animate's a little weird. And I would just recommend that at home you practice a lot with like moving these frames around and just seeing what's happening. By default, if there's no other keyframe after it, it's just going to hold that same image for the rest of the animation until it hits the end of the blankness. So notice when I create a new layer, there's this dark gray. Well, this is a frame, and this frame is holding from frame 1 all the way to frame 20, right? But there's just nothing on it. But the moment I put anything on it at any point in that hold, it is now going to hold from frame 1 all the way to the end of frame 20. It's kind of crazy, but it gives you a lot of flexibility that you can have some things holding and some things animating. I like that there's a bit of complexity here because it just really depends on what you need going on. from layer to layer. Sometimes you want things to hold in place and sometimes you want them to move. So you got all this going on, right? Well, for me to just have this play for one frame, I would go right after it, hit F7, and it would just create this blank hold right after it. So let's say I just wanted that sparkle shine to happen there. Now I moved it over and now it's holding for 2 frames. So you got to watch for that. Over here it's holding for 2 frames too when I move that away. So that's kind of weird. So I have to click there and hit F7, and I have to click there and hit F7. And then down here I have some messiness of like some blank ones that are holding, but it doesn't really matter because it's all blank. And honestly, you could clean it up if you wanted. It doesn't really make a difference. To clean that up, by the way, if you're curious on how to clean up some of these frames that you don't want, if you click on that thing and you hit Shift F6, so that's Shift plus F6, you will remove it. And you'll notice in that document I had, the Shift key is going to take things away. So F5 is to create a frame. I'll show you that one in a second. F6 is to create a keyframe, which is to say it takes whatever you had already and it creates a new keyframe with that same artwork on it, but it's a separate frame, right? And then F7 is a blank keyframe, and that's my favorite one to use because it's the most common to create a new blank keyframe, right? So if I do Shift F6 here and Shift F6 here, that's good. If you don't want to be tedious about it, you can actually click and drag. Now this is important because if I click and drag starting on the frame that's selected, it moves that frame around, right? If I'm already selecting this and I click and drag it, it will move it. If I start my selection on a frame that's not selected and I click and drag, then it can select multiple frames. You can even select multiple layers, like so. And you can even drag all of this and move all of this all together all at once, which is really fun. And then you can do a nice Shift F6 and it cleans out all those keyframes. Now, what is F5? So F5 is going to extend a keyframe. It adds a frame, but it also extends what's there. So if I am selected on a layer here and I hit F5, you'll notice that it starts extending this out one frame at a time. If I select multiple frames and hit F5, it will add that many frames all at once, which is kind of cool. If I want to get rid of this extra thing poking out here, I can select all of it and hit Shift F5, and it now has removed all of those frames. Super duper handy, right? There's some other fun things that we can do. Let me just finish this little bit here. I'll turn on onion skinning and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Onion skinning is really great. You'll notice that when this is turned on, you can see before and after, right? We learned that in the very first video that we could see what's going on. If you don't want to see as many frames, there's a couple things you can do. First thing I like to do is I like to lock the layers I'm not working on. That's really important. So that way, this one up here, you know, it has all of the ghosting going on, but as far as this white thing below it is concerned, it's just the current layer. It's not going to create all this mess of like so much green and blue everywhere and so forth. So that's helpful. Also, you can turn on outline mode, so then it's super subtle and you just see what's beneath it there. If you want to change the color of the outline, just double click on that color box there and you can switch it to whatever you want. Super nice. The subtlest of all is gray. It's kind of fun. It's like, yeah, even dark gray if you're on a black background. And then it just like barely shows up, which is super, super handy. Look, it doesn't even, it matches the color here. And so the gray is just like invisible completely. But now it's just very subtle and you can really focus on what you're doing. The other thing is you can select how many frames you want to do by mousing over this little blue line or this little green line. And it's a nice reminder here that the green is coming up and the blue is what's already happened. So the blue already happened to be there. So for this frame, I'm going to do something like this, right? This is super gloopy, rough animation, but it doesn't really need to be clean for the purposes of this video. Also, when you're roughing out something, you'd be amazed at what you can get away with roughness and what professionals do get away with on a regular basis. Actually, it's kind of fun. when you look closely at their work, it can be pretty clumpy and gloopy, but still gorgeous when you look at it as a whole. All right, and then we'll just end with something like that. Okay, so there we go. It ends one frame before the other. Some other fun features, like let's say I wanted to take all of this animation and I wanted to like move it or rotate it or something. I can totally do that. Over here you have edit multiple frames, which the bars turn white. You see, they're not green and blue anymore. So that means if I go to at least where there's artwork and I hit Control A, or I can use the select tool and I can like select it like so. And that's weird because it's still in outline mode. Let me turn off the outline mode. That's actually kind of confusing, the dark gray like that. I'll lighten it a shade so you can at least see the outline down there. There we go. Turn off outline mode. So now this is all of our frames all selected all at once. And I can hit Q, which you can see up here is the free transform tool. I know it's the quick mask tool in Photoshop, so I apologize that it's such a weird conflicting hotkey, but such it is, such is life. And I can just grab these handles here and I can transform. And it moves my whole animation. So when I turn off that edit multiple frames, you can see the whole animation has rotated. I can do the same thing if I hit undo. Let's see. I can do the same thing with like scaling it or whatever. The one thing that I have trouble doing, because you'll notice the free transform has like extra features over here, like distort, for instance. And it won't, like it'll let me skew the whole animation. But let's see if it worked. Free transform, no. Yeah, it'll scale and skew, but if you want to do like any deformations beyond that, you have to do it one layer at a time. So like, let's come in here, hit the Q key, and if you want to do like envelope, which is this really fun, like, you know, sort of liquefy distort, you cannot do this. I think it's because of memory issues. They're worried that your computer might explode if you try doing this to multiple frames at once. I actually don't know why. Adobe, if you're watching this video, please give us envelope on multiple frames editing. I don't know if that's a bug or intentional or what. But yeah, you can edit multiple frames that way. Also something fun you can do to multiple frames. If you select a range of frames, now in Adobe Animate, you get the option to scale them up, which is really handy. So it evenly spaces them out and it can totally retime your animation in a very, very, very quick way. So you can grab it and it'll tell you when you've hit double. So there's double, it has a little ×2, and then there's triple, and then there's quadruple. So this is now going to have 1, 2, 3 frames between each main frame. So it holds for 4 frames instead of just holding for 1 frame. And that's with that little scale button right there. So I can like grab 1 frame and just scale that 1 frame out as well, which is actually really handy. I've used that a few times and I like that feature. It's a fun thing to play around with in the timeline. Undo all of that biz. What else have we got down here? There's so many fun features. So we got all frames. Yep. The onion skinning. Onion skinning is a little different. If you're used to the old version of onion skinning, it does take some adapting. Basically, they simplified it so outline mode is here, and then you just turn on or off onion skinning. Yeah, and then you've got your controls over here, like play and step forward 1 frame, etc. Yeah, step forward to the next keyframe, which is the Alt. A lot of nice things with like hotkey hints. You know, it tells you what the hotkeys are, so you can never forget. All right, so over here you've got the zoom in and out, which is pretty straightforward. It just lets you, you know, customize this. Oh gosh, I ruined it. I think that's what it originally was. That's kind of nice if you have a really long animation. We're not going to do anything super long in the class. It's all going to be built for video games, so you won't have to worry too much about that. All right, well, you know, that pretty much covers it for me. I think you guys are ready to dive into actually making a flipbook and getting this prepped for in-game. We're going to go into that in the next video. I'm going to show you a little bit about how to create a layout. Here it's a 9 frame animation, so we're going to do with 3x3, but I'll also show you how to do all kinds of formats so you can have your templates ready to go, ready for production. All right, see you in the next one.